It is my great privilege today to have Joe Pici and Mayor Mutz with me. We're going to talk about pivoting from adversity. You know, all of us know that 2020 has been a very difficult year, and we all had great plans for 2020. And here we are today after COVID, after some tensions in our communities and just some real challenging things that have happened, working from home, working remotely. And I wanted to bring these two gentlemen with me here today and talk about pivoting from adversity. Both of them have some great experience and careers and all those great things. So I'll take a moment. If you don't mind, Joe, introduce yourself. Tell everyone where you're from, what you're doing, and why you're here.
Well, I'm Joe Pici. I now live in Orlando, Florida, and I'm here because I have been very experienced at pivoting, overcoming adversity, because that's what life is all about. You know, we've been through the 9/11, we've been through the 2008. My wife and I have been through so many things. So when this happened, we have a toolbox for how to pivot and how to recapture. And so that's why I'm here today.
Great. And Mayor Mutz, how about you? I know you got a long history, a large family even. You know, tell us a little bit about that and then your background with businesses. And then today you're serving the community.
Well, like Joe, I have a history of surviving, and to survive, you have to pivot. And the less flexible, the less creative, the less willing to recognize the immediate realities, the more difficult that task becomes. So really think pivoting at its roots comes from recognizing you have less control over circumstances than you think you do, and you want to major on the 4%, 5%, maybe even in some cases 10% of control you do have. And recognizing that that's what creates pivots. Much of what we would love to do, much of what we plan, much of what we have great intentions towards doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for reasons well beyond our control. So learning to flex and survive through, I've done that through businesses in the past, and I've been in 6 different industries, and certainly with 12 kids and now 25 grandkids, you learn to pivot. I'm in Boulder right now, just because of the need to be with a premature born grandchild at 24 weeks. And I'm with our son and daughter in love during this time, just to have a little bit of time with them this week. And their life plans change dramatically. That's the way life is.
We'll say a prayer for your family. I appreciate you telling us that and letting us be aware of that, Mayor Mutz. Well, we have some questions here that we got submitted from some of our listeners, and one of them is, and this is for both of you on this one, what is lessons you have learned in the last 6 months on moving people from tension to traction? So let's start with Mayor Mutz. What's your response to moving people from tension to traction?
We first need to focus on what matters most. So if we are going to have a lot of tension, that means we start to have to triage what will resolve that tension. So what matters most? Where are the pinch points on resources, people's availability, time available, and that where we are going to be able to impact the greatest amount of people the most effectively as quickly as possible. So that's a big range of things, but it is the way you have to kind of put the snowball back together in order to try and decide what to do first. When we do that well, then we can stay away from some of the phrase of criticism, which will come both within your team and it comes from outside of your team. As you go along, it can even come within your own family, you know, as you're pursuing some of these things. It is very, very important, therefore, to kind of get a clear north on what it is that we need to do. And the more you're guided by principle, the more you're guided by pre-decisions with respect to things that you will do and you won't do. So for example, honoring everyone as I serve as mayor, it's one of my pre-decisions. So everything's going to go through that lens of what do we do that does the greatest job of honoring everyone in anything that we make going forward. while recognizing you cannot please everyone. That cannot be our goal. Pleasing is not leading. Leaders stand in front of a lot of criticism because it takes time many times for people to see the long-term value. And I would tell you that that's masking if, in the most current example I can give you. And people will take all kinds of positions on that. But the reality is, watch the numbers. And the numbers in the communities that were masked, the positivity rates came down. That's what we worked on. So what did we do to accomplish that? We worked on focusing on human needs, hospitalization needs, healthcare needs, and not everything else that may have felt like stolen rights to others. And so if you do that, it's an easier prioritization to follow.
Thank you for that, Mayor Mutz. Joe, how about you? This
I'm
moving
going
people.
to go, Mayor is in a leadership capacity. What I do is I help companies, individuals really generate business. And to me, tension is present, traction is future. And so the quicker we can get our eyes on where we want to go. When this thing hit, nobody was ready for it. But the people who were less ready were people who had not focused on where do we want to go this year? What are we trying to accomplish? Now, once we know what we want to accomplish, then I call them non-negotiables. You use the word traction, and traction is a business philosophy. And in the business philosophy, there's certain things you just have to do called rocks. What I work with my clients are non-negotiables. The only way you can leave tension and get to traction is you've got to limit and find out what are those action items and those steps I can take to get me to our goal. And not try to win every battle, but win those. Just like everybody else. In February, we took a shot. I mean, we lost more money in 25 minutes than I made in my best 2 years being a college football coach. Just like that. We focused on what we did well, how we could deliver it legally, and we made our money back in 3 weeks. But it's because we focused on the non-negotiables. So my recommendation is, what are those things that will move the ball down the field, get you closer to your goal, and focus on that?
Oh, absolutely. Joe, that leads into a question I had for you here. I heard recently that you can't prepare for a crisis in a crisis. I know that over your career, you've been through challenging events. You mentioned a few of them in the early 9/11, different things of the economy crashing. How do you and you started this conversation, but how do you stay prepared?
Okay. First of all, I think you have to be in the state of ready. I heard a guy say one time, you're either coming out of a crisis, in a crisis, or going into a crisis. Our world is a list of crises, whether it's a family illness, whether it's financial. I mean, in the course of our lives, I hate to be negative. It's not negative. More bad things happen than good things. Why are people shocked by that? So I would first say, to be in a state of ready, do you have a solution-based toolbox? Kind of like those old submarine movies. When something bad happens here at Pici and Pici, it's kind of the alarm goes off. Dive, dive, dive. And we have a quick business meeting. We look at what the issue is, and we list what are the solutions are going to get us through this. And so I think being in a state of ready means you're not worried, you're not running scared, but you are prepared and realize economies can never stay like this as long as the last peak. It was bound to be something that was going to knock it off. Why were people surprised? Now, they weren't ready for a worldwide shutdown, but it's the same principles that will get you through that challenge.
Wow, that's great, Joe. So Mayor Mutz, this is another question on preparation that was submitted. It says, what is an example of building unity in the city of Lakeland government is taking to better serve the community, which prepares them for opportunities ahead? So what actions and it could be any community, because I know we're going to have some audience members that aren't from Lakeland, but what are you doing to serve the community and prepare them for the opportunities ahead?
Well, I love what Joe just shared, and I couldn't agree more. And so one of the things that the whole George Floyd tragedy provided was not a newness of the realities, but a honing of our understanding and a shift in some of the perceptions and a willingness to consider the absence of level playing fields that exists. Now, life doesn't ever have level playing fields. So we're not setting ourselves up for saying we're going to create all level playing fields. Not everyone has the same level of initiative. So we're not going to assume that if I provide this tray of opportunity, everybody dives in and no one's hungry in the process of that. But what we do have to do is make sure that we're not leaving systemic gaps that exist that can be fixed, that can be addressed. So let's then triage those things at the top and talk about some of those. So some of those are social justice issues. Some of those are laws. Some of those are some issues where we can be much more universally caring than we may do today. Body cams, I will tell you, fall into the arena of there's less of an issue probably of departments wanting those than there is an issue of someone who says, I don't get treated the same when I'm stopped for a traffic stop that somebody else may get treated when they're stopped. So it creates a level of accountability. So the movement into that discussion, the readiness to be able to take some of those considerations is part of saying, hey, this is a gap. It still does exist. We want to work to improve it. Now, there are secondary benefits that come from that. There's obviously legal recordings that are then submissible as evidence and actually can protect police in the process, but this works both ways. So what do we do then to say, okay, where are our gaps in community on training? We may have great training programs that would be available for everyone, but the reality is we don't really work hard to embrace some people that would be less exposed to that training and less aware of it, and who don't even have mentors that have provided an alleyway of hope for that kind of awareness of a profession that even exists, that we can do a much better job of bringing those things together. So we are creating a plan called Lift Lakeland that the commission is about to finalize that starts to take those from the top, some of the things we can do educationally, training, mentoring, legally, that are the first fruits of trying to close some of those gaps. And that will happen again, and it'll happen at a chapter 2 level and a chapter 3 level, like fine tuning anything that we do, because we'll get better at it. In the meantime, we get the fruit of honoring everyone in a more realistic way, which is the originally stated goal.
Mayor, I love that message of hope and that message of lifting each other up. Desperately needed in these times, desperately, without a doubt. So back to Joe, nearly every organization has needed to pivot during COVID. What is one of the greatest successful pivots that you have seen?
Oh, I will tell you that this whole movement to go virtually wasn't as seamless as you would think. One of my biggest clients in Orlando was literally able to move their entire 47-person staff from around the country out of offices, have their computers up and going within 8 hours, servicing their clients. Okay. But when they made that move, they made the main thing the main thing. I know we're negotiating with Chubb Insurance about establishing, they want to use our sales training methodology, do a translation licensing in South America because of what we do with the teaching of live phone call training. Well, they were the only insurance company in South America able to go virtual like that, which meant all the other insurance companies in South America were out of business. You see, and that's what I mean about being in the ready. When it happened here, when we got nailed, we don't have 58 people fixing things. We had to decide what are the top 5 things we needed to do to keep this business alive, well, and profitable. And for you business owners out there, there's still massive profit during a bad economy. In fact, what you're going to find, companies grow and excel in a down economy at a greater percentage if they keep their eye on the ball.
That's good. Yeah. Well, I'm going to move on to Mayor Mutz. The theme of Live to Lead this year that John Maxwell's helping us produce is Change Your World. Where are you as the mayor and community leader leading change?
I think we're leading change on the human relations side. I think we're leading change on affordable housing, which is an extension of that. I'm a social and fiscal conservative. So it is interesting for me to see that some of our constituents would think that I'm way off on the far left side. And I think that's part of the problem of what we talk about. We talk about, conservative and liberal and left and right. I think what we do well when we lead well is we care about people. And so human beings are found in the middle of these extremes. And so as a commission, I believe we've developed a much more human-centric bias and desire to deliver for the next decade some of the things that need to be done now. And it takes time to do these things. So it's 10 years to do affordable housing. It's 10 years to do water at the right levels in the right places, to build the wells and get those things going. So a consciousness that this is an attractive place to live and it's an attractive place to grow. We've worked with Amazon recently, who has now double expanded in Lakeland since they already started here, because they go, this city's the easiest city to work in we have ever worked anywhere. We love that you guys just get to yes fast. And we figured out how to do things with them well and try not to trip over. And they move. Brother, let me tell you something. They do not mess around when they, so I won't dive into just Amazon, but things like that have to happen, and you have to be nimble and able. We were wired as a country to be able to work remotely. We didn't ever believe we really would need to, and we thought that might be nice for somebody who's recovering from an injury in the hospital. We never thought about the fact, no, we might have to survive this way. And 80% of our employees, it took us probably 30 days to get everybody deployed well, to be able to work remotely. Still working quickly, but this whole realization that our expectations about where we work from and what we'll be doing and when it'll be happening start to dramatically change. We're coming out of this, therefore, far more flexible. And so as a city, I think we want to be a place that maximizes and I don't mean, when I say a city, by the way, I really mean our county, because our cities work really well together back and forth and do a lot of exchanging of ideas and information. So as a region, let's just say, we want to certainly be influencing that this is a place to grow, and it's a place to grow with families in a very healthy way, and it's in an area that honors people. Because that last value I just stated, is going to become dramatically important across the country on an increasing basis. People are going to choose to live where they feel safe and where people are well honored, because that takes the whole tension out, allowing the traction that Joe talked about earlier to exist.
And what Lakeland has done is amazing. And as a teenager, during the first Desert Storm around 1991, I was what we called a ledger brat. My mom worked at the Ledger. She'd worked there for 35, 40 years. And I was out hawking newspapers on the street corner in Lakeland, extra read all about this Desert Storm war. And so I've just grown up here. Polk County is home, and what y'all are doing is great. So thank you for that. Thank you for the again, the message of hope and thinking forward, trying to gain this traction. We had a little conversation.
We're encouraged.
We had a little conversation before this. We started recording here about culture. And so I'm going to ask Joe this question. Joe, you work with a lot of corporations, some large, some small. What approach do you find useful and recommend to others to improve the sales culture of a team?
Which culture?
The sales culture.
Right.
What you're an expert in.
All right. Well, first of all, to develop culture, okay, it's got to start from the top down, but you have to flip it. Management has to be willing to serve below. It's exactly what John Maxwell teaches. It's the upside down leadership model. But now let's get into sales culture. For a sales culture to be growing, vibrant, good times, bad times, there has to be tremendous clarity. Everybody needs to be on the same page. All of the messaging, all of the skills, all of the processes. The problem when you lose your culture is because everybody is on a different page. You have to start out with clarity. But then you have to have the right people on the bus. You have to have people that want to sell. And believe it or not, even though people wear the sales hat, they don't always want to sell. So you got to have clarity. You have to have focus. You have to have the right people. And then they have to then have a clear understanding of what is it my job calls for. What are the non-negotiables and what am I going to be held accountable for? And I'm going to tell you, if you want to see the fiber of culture eaten away in sales, companies that lack accountability, I didn't say pressure, I didn't say being obnoxious, I'm talking about an accountability standard, lose their culture. So if you wrap all of this together and you start out with a clear vision and top down, everyone serves the next person down, then when it gets to the client or the customer, they're treated well. Make sure you hire the right people. I hate to say this, you'll be mad at me. You hire slow and you fire fast in sales. This is what I do for a living, okay? Then you have got to have an accountability standards as to what is the messaging going out of this office? How are we getting in front of decision makers? What is our sales presentation? Do we have our priorities down? Once you put that all together in a system, you're going to have a great sales culture.
That's great. I agree with you wholeheartedly on keeping that culture and that leading from the, being the servant leader. Of course, we all want to strive to do that. Joe, I'm a faithful listener of your Sales Edge podcast. And I don't know that we were a few weeks into this COVID crisis. And you are on your podcast screaming. I mean, hey, recover lost revenue, get in there. And it's like, wow, Joe's heart. That's the whole reason I invited you to this. So what I'm getting at is you're a tiger, man. So how do you keep that resolve in down times and I know a positive attitude is number one, but you were immediate to say recover lost revenue.
Okay. Number one, I really guard my attitude. I don't watch the news. I'm not anti-news. I just don't watch it. I mean, at Pici and Pici, if this Pici goes down, the ship sinks. I've got to guard my attitude. I've got to take in great information. Also, if you walk into my office, there's no pictures of me with Zig Ziglar and famous people. It's a war room. It is environmentally built because here at Pici and Pici, yes, I do the training, the coaching, the speaking, but I do the selling. And so if my attitude is not 100% focused on what's best for my client, so I have to be other person centric. So when this thing hit, we didn't go into depression. Here's something else. All of you, if you are following John Maxwell, he is an advocate of the DISC model of human behavior. We train that stuff, we coach that stuff, but here I have been wired with the behavior style that I'm average when things are really good and I'm great when things are not. I am challenged by that. Now, that's not prideful. It's not yay me. That's my wiring. So when adversity hits, I tend to feel challenged to get through it. So our value proposition, which someday I'll teach all of you this, was we help people gain an unfair advantage over their competition, generate quality leads, book more appointments, close more business. The minute COVID hit, it changed to we specialize in helping companies, individuals recapture lost revenue, because that's what it was all about. So that's how I keep the edge. That's what we're all about here at Pici and Pici.
Absolutely.
Can I build on that a little bit?
I was going to ask you, we're about to wrap, so I would love you to finish this up for us, Mayor Mutz.
Well, I'm a salesman first. You know, that's how I grew up and that's how I cut my teeth. And I loved commission jobs all the way through the process. And it is the last 10% that you do that other people don't do around you. We quit too early. And for those of us who are in sales and those of us who recognize that it is about recapturing lost revenue, that is our job. We're frontline. The reason we get criticized in the accounting department and the reason we get criticized in some of the other areas of the company is because it looks so easy. And when we go lazy, and it isn't easy, but if we go lazy, it's expensive. It's expensive for the company to carry salespeople who aren't creatively finding nuance opportunities to serve everybody better. The worse circumstances are, the better a job you can do in that last 10%. That last 10% really grows to 15, 20, 25% because people are quitting underneath you, even doing what they used to do and doing it more poorly. So you want to be shining. And even if you've been the number 2 supplier to a customer with greater potential for years and years and years, that's your moment to shine. That's when they go, I want them to be that. So all we need is one trip from their number 1 supplier, and we are in the door because they say, where do I go for somebody who wants to help us win? Right there, because you were there when it mattered.
Yeah.
Well,
hey,
go
Brian,
ahead, Joe.
I have a gift for your listeners, if I can give it away.
Absolutely, please do.
All right. If you're listening to this, take out your cell phone and you're going to text the word Sales Edge, one word, SALESEDGE, and you're going to send it to 55678. Now, if it breaks up the word, put quotes around, it's got to be one word. It'll take you to the Pici and Pici link. Hit the link, it'll take you to a splash page. We have a free Recapture Lost Revenue Through Virtual Selling 5-video e-course. It's free. Once you put your name in your email, it'll come right to your email. You can watch it at your leisure. It's going to stay up there. But it literally will teach you skills, attitudes, and processes for recapturing not only lost revenue, but how about lost employees? How about just recapturing? So that's a gift for you guys.
Thank you, Joe. Hey, it was great to have you listen to this today, Pivoting from Adversity. Hey, this is part 1 of Pivoting from Adversity. We're also going to hear from our other panelists, Troy Smith from Geico, who's also very involved in the community with United Way, and then Chris Nichols, who's from Center State Bank, so we can kind of get an idea on the economy. I'd hate to be sitting in his seat right now trying to make speculation on the economy, but we're going to put him in that seat. So thanks for listening today. We enjoyed having you here. Please join us and have fun at this Live to Lead Lakeland event. Thank you.
Every customer that walks through our doors, they have hopes, dreams, plans that they want to execute in their lives, and we are a facilitator to help them accomplish those dreams. I think we should never lose sight of the fact that we are a trusted advisor to our clients, which allows us to really formulate a relationship with an entire family that spans generations, and it's frankly something that brings the most satisfaction to what we do every day.
Gather around the table, roll the die, challenge yourself and your team to a life-changing experience as you play the John Maxwell Team Leadership Game, a game designed to lower the barriers to honest evaluation of leadership within your company.
Playing the leadership game is probably one of the fastest ways to break down barriers between people on any kind of team.
When I first heard that we were playing a leadership board game, I really had no idea what to expect.
The game itself makes you very comfortable about being open.
When I heard that we were going to be doing a leadership game, I was a little skeptical, but the feedback and just the traction in such a short amount of time has been amazing.
I really feel that people learn best when they're having fun.
It was so engaging, just like an actual board game, except the benefit was actual real-time interaction with people that you care about.
Hi, John Leanhoutz here. I'm the president and CEO of both the Summit Fund International Flight and Expo and the Aerospace Center for Excellence. And I want to tell you, as a recipient of Brian Brogan's excellent training during a leadership program to help us build a better relationship amongst all of our directors, we came away enlightened, engaged, communicating better than we ever have, and an understanding how hard it is to keep the communication going and that you can never stop working at it. It was worth every penny.
This connects people and allows them to communicate in a way that they just don't do without sitting down around a table in this game setting.
If you're considering playing a leadership game at your company, it's a must.
We have never done anything like this.
You have to have it for your company. It's going to help you figure out your employees. It's going to help you figure out yourself and make the right decisions in your business.
Raise your collective potential. The John Maxwell Team Leadership Game. Blow the lid off.
It is my great pleasure to have Chris Nichols. Chris is from Center State Bank for part 2 of Pivoting from Adversity. So Chris, please introduce yourself to the Live to Lead community.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having us here. So Chris Nichols, Director of Capital Markets for Center State Bank, South State Bank. Actually, we're right in the middle of a merger, so we're changing. We're big fans of your organization, and we're honored to be here. So
thanks so much. Center State has been a great sponsor the 2 years I've hosted, so we're appreciative for that. So everyone watching today, they're one of our sponsors, and that's the way we can do this and make our ticket price lower. So thank you for that, Chris. One of the questions we have here is the theme of Live to Lead this year is change your world. Where are you leading this change?
Yeah, good question, Brian, for all organizations. And you know, we've been on this cultural transformation at Center State, South State now for a while, and it's paid off in spades during this pandemic as we've had to alter our risk practices, our cultural view, the way we do things, our operations on a day-to-day basis. And because the pandemic came on so fast, and we've done a lot of time in pandemic planning, and really that went out the door in the first 2 minutes of our first pandemic meeting. And so now what we're finding is we need to do a lot more experimentation, be a lot more nimble, a lot more agile, and that just permeates kind of through the organization, not just for the pandemic, but just how to deal with technology, how to deal with the changing workforce, how to deal with the changing customer base. And, you know, it's starting to pay off, and we still have a long ways to go, but work on some changes.
Yeah, Chris, that's so true that not only pandemic times, but just in general, any kind of crisis, any type things that change our organization. This is a great thing to test our culture and test our organization and find ways to improve. So glad to hear that Center State's doing that. where might you recommend that we as leaders could innovate to improve here in Lakeland and in other communities? And then what would that look like?
Sure. So I think it's, come upon all leaders, one, to build that culture. And you need to get, what we say at Center State is, get the process right and outcomes will follow. So really focus on that cultural process and that innovative process that we can put in place. Training that, one, it's okay to fail. It's okay to try some things. So at any point in time, we have 100 of experiments going on throughout the organization. These are very low risk, targeted projects, for the Paycheck Protection Program, for example. We've been out there, we've tried different things. We were one of the first banks to have a fully automated system up front. We're one of the first banks to come out with forgiveness and work on that starting back August 10th. And so we're only able to do those things because before we experimented, we were okay to try some things, whether it's, pushing down decisions to the field, which we've tried a long time ago. And what we found is this balance between centralization and decentralization. So we make some things in our organization in a centralized fashion to gain some scales and some operating leverage, while at the same time give our regional presidents full autonomy to make decisions. So in Lakeland, we have very centralized. Our regional president is very close to the ground there, knows that, and that organizational structure has helped us, and then it's permeated through our culture. So by the time we get to a pandemic response, we're able to make quick decisions in a centralized fashion on one aspect, but then customize it for the locale.
Sounds like you're doing some great things internally. One of the other questions we got here from some of our listeners was, let me find it here. I've lost a train of it. Okay. When COVID lockdowns began, was there more a sense of collaboration, pivoting together in the banking industry, or more of a sense of competition, the first to pivot or the best to pivot?
I think banking's blessed by being fairly cooperative all across. So, we compete against many banks, many credit unions in the state, and really we don't think of them as competition. We think, as an industry, we need to do a better job. We're really competing against the Amazons of the world, against, many of the consumer-facing organizations that I would say banking is a little behind on. And so as an industry, we're trying to catch up, and I think we're doing so rapidly. But, as we talk to banks in Southern Florida or out of Orlando, teachers there, or City National to the South, Tampa, all great organizations, and we try to learn from each other. So it's been much more cooperative when we try to figure out how to keep our workforce at home, keep our workforce safe, keep our customers safe, while still trying to get business done for the area.
That makes good sense to be an industry partner. So I'm glad to hear you're doing that. So what do you see ahead in 2021 that we might need to address in our businesses? So some of our Live to Lead community are entrepreneurs. Some of them are small businesses. Just what do you see that we need to do better in 2021?
Yeah, I think, more adaptability. I think, 2020 as a year isn't done with us. And so we think we still have some changing to do. And then 2021, will probably be more of the same. We don't think we're going to get back to the quote unquote normal until probably mid 2022. And so 2021 is still going to be highly adaptive. We think we're still going to have some credit stress, still, going to have to work hard to get America back to work, particularly some of the smaller businesses in the hospitality area for Florida. And so we're going to try to support them as much as possible. And as a business leader, I think you're just going to have to stay nimble, be prepared for uncertainty, and be able to react, be able to create new workflows, new processes, new ways to help the customer, while embracing technology whenever possible to reduce costs.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I'll say that we've been hyper impressed by some of our small businesses that we bank, just being able to adapt, whether it's cutting hair in the parking lot or doing to an all catering business if you're a indoor restaurant. That's been pretty good. So we want to support that at Center State every way we can. Marketing help, risk planning, contingency planning, new ideas, technology help, et cetera.
Yeah, as a coach, trainer, and speaker of leadership, we're constantly encouraging people to adapt and embrace change. And this year has been just a way to polarize how important it is and recognize and be willing to pivot. I mean, some of these restaurants have done a phenomenal job of sitting people down, spread out, having outside seating. The takeout business, they have done a phenomenal job of learning to use those services. So, as you said, some of these businesses are doing an excellent job. So here's a very difficult question for you, man. We're on the brink of an election year. We're on the 2020, all the adversity that has happened. What's your forecast for our economy, fourth quarter 2020, and then going into 2021?
Yeah, great question, Brian. I wish we really knew. We have some pretty smart people here at Center State, and we meet often on it. Ask that question. I think it's going to be a little rough. I think we'll probably gain more stability than we've experienced in 2020. So I think in that aspect, it gets back to partway to normal. I think if we do see, Florida, I think is probably a hotbed for the election. So, we're trying to forecast that, and we're trying to have a hard time to see which way the state goes. On one hand, I think Florida has been a beneficiary of many other states where, California is a perfect example with higher taxes and just more regulation. Florida's benefited, I think, as the pandemic occurs on the East Coast and has more of an impact. I think many of the households that move back and forth may make Florida their permanent home. And so being able to take advantage of that, I think Florida's in a pretty good state with its weather, with its economy, with its governance, to take advantage of some of these changes. And so I think the Southeast in general will fare relatively better than the rest of the country in many areas. So we look for the economy to be still, kind of a minefield to step through, but I think Florida is well positioned. So we're optimistic.
That's great. I appreciate all that. And I think I have to agree with you that we're in that position. Let me ask you this. You talked about some resolve that some of these businesses have. I think there's both good and bad. So do you see long-term impacts on the banking industry and industry in general as a result of the COVID pandemic?
I do, and I think it's a net positive. Banking and many industries, many of our small businesses have dragged their feet on some technology, haven't want to spend the money or haven't want to, just didn't have the time. And, we feel for that because we face the same thing as a bank that we know we need to change. And we probably haven't changed fast enough in retrospect. What we found during this pandemic and this economic shock is that, the more flexible we were and the more we had technology, the more we could actually redeploy that technology. So whether it be a chatbot or whether it be, a call center, whatever it was, luckily we had the infrastructure, largely in place to be able to adapt and to have all our employees work from home. And I think that's the same thing for businesses that, while they may not want to change, I think those have been the grittiest, pivoted right away. I think in early March when you saw this was going to be more of a permanent change, they quickly altered the business model, got the technology out, was able to take online orders more, be able to process, manage their supply chain accordingly. And that's what I think is going to happen going forward. And so some of those changes were going to be bound to happen. What we say is really what we did is take the next 5 years as we would have brought out these projects and just rushed them in about 6 months of time. And I think that's going to continue.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And I think, as you alluded to, it's going to be for the better. The people that we're serving today as a result of being at home and doing those things, there's a market share of that was always there. There maybe a 20%er that people that just don't get out as much as others do. And so there's a place to serve these people and do it in a better, more economical way and learn to support each other. I do. I'm agreeing with you. I like to see this light at the end of the tunnel in this pandemic. So any follow-up finishing thoughts for the Live to Lead group?
Well, what you're doing, I think, is helpful to get leaders, one motivated, and two, to give them the tools. We all we're building these airplanes as we're flying each of our businesses, no matter what line of industry you're in. And that, I think, takes more support. So to have something like your organization to be there to support that we could turn to get advice on how to do certain things, how to, whether it's centralization or decentralization, whether, how much money to spend on technology next year, whatever it is, having a forum, having a group of high quality leaders that can exchange ideas, I think is pretty helpful. And I think that just helps us adapt, help us improvise, and help us be more agile going forward. So we appreciate that. And I think that's what the future holds for most industries.
Thank you, Chris. And that's what we hope to be, is an annual event where leaders can come together, bounce ideas off each other, hear from world-renowned speakers. And so I'm grateful you recognize that. And thank you for your support as always.
Thank you. And thank you guys for everything you do for the community.
And thank you so much today listening to this Live to Lead. It was great to have Chris with us. We're going to have one more speaker, and we just have enjoyed our time with you. Go and live to lead others. Thank you.
We love our new home.
There's so much space.
But we have ants.
Expired. Expired. Expired.
It's a lot of house. I hope you can keep it clean.
At least Geico makes bundling our home and car insurance easy.
For bundling made easy, go to geico.com.
Are you ready to reduce workplace conflict, reduce employee turnover, and increase your productivity? If you're ready to put Brian to work for your company, give him a call at 863-800-9658 or email him at brianb@buildcs.net. Now, back to today's episode.
Hello, I want to welcome you to this third session of Live to Lead, Pivoting from Adversity. I am so grateful to have Troy Smith here, and we're going to have a conversation around pivoting from adversity, some questions that have been sent in, and we'll just get started. But first of all, Troy, will you introduce yourself to these folks?
Absolutely. As Brian said, Troy C. Smith. I do a lot within our community. I am a sales manager at Geico. Been there for over 22 years. I'm also currently United Way of Central Florida's Resource and Development Chair for this 2020-2021 campaign, which, when you think about the reason that we're all gathered here today, and you think about the challenge within our environment and adversity, on both hands within Geico and United Way, we have this landscape in front of us that's incredibly challenging as we pivot and move forward into uncharted waters. I'm a huge sports advocate. I call myself a has-been wannabe. I played all the sports, wanted to be in the pros, but here I am talking with everyone virtually right now. I'm a believer of God and strong faith, and that really sums it up in a nutshell.
Well, Troy, thank you so much for your service to our community, this Lakeland community, and what you guys are doing over at United Way, and the whole team at Geico that supports that and is the sponsor of Live to Lead. So thank you for everything you're doing there.
Thank you.
We'll jump right into these questions. Let me give you the first one here. This one says, good leaders routinely and systematically develop other leaders to be ready for the next opportunity. What is one lesson you have taught another person to develop them for the opportunities ahead?
That's a strong statement. And one of the things that I pride myself on is making sure I, first of all, can recognize within every situation we're going through what the opportunities may be. And with that being said, the leadership group that I'm developing, I'll take a moment to say, pause. Let's talk about what's going on here and show them where the opportunities may be. Sometimes it's real time and it's actually as it's happening. And then sometimes it's after the fact. When it's real time, the folks that I work with, they will tell you, Troy, would you just stop asking me so many questions? Because I pull things out and I say, what do you think? Tell me what you see. And that provokes the thought process of people developing, getting to a higher level of how they assess situations, and then it's their plan of attack and actions that we can coach and develop even further from that. That's real time. After the fact, there are situations and meetings or WebExes that we have, and I'll call an individual back and I say, okay, so remember when this happened? And I gave them the exact time, which I call the triggering event. And I have them walk me through their process so that I can now pour into them and say, okay, so what if this would have happened? And these are two examples of how I would take the moment to pour into these leaders to show them, okay, this is the development, and here's an opportunity or a gap in developing that. And then, Brian, what I usually do after the fact is, because of certain leaders, they're more advanced in where they're going. And I remind them, don't forget this, because one day you're going to be pouring back into somebody else to give them the same feedback. So make sure you cherish this.
That is wonderful, Troy, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. That is just a way to help others, and you're definitely committed to that. You know, for those listening today, my sister worked with Troy, and she's a high fan and friend of Troy, so she highly recommends him. So thanks for all you do there with your team there.
Thank you.
Troy, I've heard you speak on hope. Tell us what hope means to you, and now how can we share hope with others?
Hope, I came across hope as an acronym many years back. And with that acronym, the original acronym was help open people's eyes, hope. And I love that. And then as I just found myself just drawn to that, and you think about with everything that we're going through in our world, you know, we need a lot of hope. And in every situation, I'm able to take that hope and break that acronym down into a new acronym. Like my works with United Way, and it's, you know, helping others, helping out people everywhere was another acronym. Helping out people everywhere. And then when you think about this pandemic and the things we're going through with the pandemic, COVID-19, it was healing overcomes this pandemic with empathy. And so whatever the situation is, you know, you apply hope, I can apply hope. And the hope, you know, when you think about hope in general, you know, it's basically your perception, it's basically being optimistic, you know, it's basically being positive, you know, in what the outcomes may be. It's not like wishing for a fairy godmother and just close your eyes and you wish. Yet there's some action and there's some things that we do to imprint on others and to share a message, encourage others, inspire others to provide that hope. And in times like this, leaders have to step up their game even more, because the folks that they impact, the folks that are following them, these are the folks that are looking for their leadership and their ability to provide hope. And if their mindset and if their outlook is just all jaded in certain ways, Brian, you have a huge gap. You have a huge challenge for that. So the concept of hope is something that I use throughout my speaking engagements, something I use throughout my day-to-day activities, something that I use just, it's now embedded in my DNA, that message of hope.
Yeah, I can hear it in you, man. It's awesome. And that you use that acronym to memorize and use it, and then pivot and transition to use it for other things, the same message, but
right.
Use it in the time that's present. I love that you talk about mindset, because mindset is so important in life. You know, our outlook on life is going to become our outcome on life. And we just need to have a great mindset. Hey, are we going through some challenging times? Without a doubt, these are challenging times.
Yes.
But we need to take what we know how to do and what we've learned and apply them in these times of crisis to come out with a better outcome. So, man, that hope, you're just inspiring me, man. I appreciate it, Troy. Here's another one they got here. An old adage held, true leadership emerges in adversity. As a community ambassador, what do we need to allow for true leadership to shine right now?
And when you think about true leadership, it's like a Crayola box of crayons and with 64 colors. And so leadership is so diverse, right? There's such a large array of how people lead. And regardless of which it is for that person, which one it is for that person has to recognize, here's your opportunity, right? We see it in the superhero movies, right? Here's your time. The movie changes with the music and it sets the tone, and then boom, superhero shows up, right? It's the same thing for leadership and stepping forward. And leadership, people cannot wait to react. You have to step forward and go forward. Even though we're in uncharted areas, you still have to realize that, all right, now my call to duty, I've heard the alarm, my call to duty is right now, what do I do? And let me just give you a brief example, Brian. Because of the fact that everyone is going through what I call desocialization, right? So being confined at home and not having the ability to feel my energy or my power and I feel yours, and that physical contact, right? That high five or that fist bump or whatever the case may be. So that's removed from the situation. So as a leader, you have to recognize that, and you have to think forward and say, well, what can I do in place of that? Man, we have an opportunity to leverage our technology, and leveraging our technology could be as simple as getting your phone, calling someone up, FaceTiming them, right? And say, hey, are you good? Are you good? Are you okay? What's going on? And just have a dialogue, and just random dialogues. That would be an example as leaders, right? And specific type of leaders that operate in that type of lane. That would be a classic example of, okay, you can't sit there and wait for someone to say, don't you think it's time for you to start leading? No, you just got to go out and make it happen. And that would be an example, Brian, that I would share with everyone. And again, everyone is a little different. Some are more analytical, some are more servant, some are more charismatic. I mean, whatever your lane is that you travel in, you have to recognize, here's the opportunity at hand. And then what can I do as a leader to make things happen?
That's wonderful. John Maxwell is the host of this event, and he has this saying where he says, if you're a leader, you lead people differently. So you go to them. He said, you're not on top, but you go to them and you lead them in their space. And what you just said, so true, the diversity of leadership. Not all leaders are the same, and not all the people that are leading are the same. Just taking the time to think about the diversity and the difference of opinions and the different ideas and what motivates people. Those are great things to consider. And it for me, I'm gonna be honest here, I just have to slow down and think like that. I have to say, wait a minute, how does this person think and what motivates them? So I appreciate, those are great stories, man, how you help and lead out there.
And Brian, if I can interject, what you just hit on is paramount, because it's not just for you, it's for every leader. We are so conditioned within our society to have this huge blanket that's one size fits all, and we want to throw it over everything and everyone. And we expect sometimes that it's going to solve all the problems. But like you said, we have to take a step back, and we have to think, and we have to realize the body of work, the folks that we are impacting, right? And John Maxwell also said, leadership is nothing but influence.
That's right.
Simple influence. You have to know who you're working with and how you can influence that person, because the motivating factors may be completely different across the board. So I'm glad you hit on that as well.
Absolutely. I got one more question for you here, Troy. Someone here said, let me find that one again. Okay. Could you share a success story with us that you have seen in this community?
Absolutely. Within the community itself, I would say that you have a large opportunity for people to really identify first where there may be gaps and addressing those gaps in the grand scheme of helping people out, right? So one of the things that I've seen within this community is an organization that's attached to the church that I go to, Victory Church. It's called the Dream Center. And the Dream Center is located downtown Lakeland. I forget the exact address, but what they do is they focus on going into communities that are less off, and they highlight and they amplify different areas. And I was able to take part in that. And one of the things that they've done is that they've had a community outreach. Now we talk about missionary work within the body of Christ and going out into the world in different places that don't know Christ. And then the same thing is that we have situations that within their own community, we got people that don't know who God is and that really need to get some hope and some light. And with the Dream Center, they've been fantastic with this. They've gone out and they've loved on these different areas in the community. And they take packages of food and household needs and just the things that we may take for granted sometimes. And they knock and they go door to door and they provide these packages. I've had the opportunity to do that with the Dream Center. And again, you know, we're so fortunate in some cases that we don't even realize how others are dealing with situations. And this is prior to the pandemic. And you never know about the housing situation and low income situations. And then to see people receive people, right? Whether they're a believer or not, it really is, it's just the goodness out of people's heart and within the Dream Center that they're going and they're providing these resources to these people. And Dream Centers is funded by the communities, funded by the churches. And that has been a tremendous success that I've seen over. Now, I just don't want to just highlight just the Dream Center, Brian, because though you're asking me about one story, when I think about Lakeland, the phenomenal thing about Lakeland is the whole community. I've been involved in so many different activities. The whole community just loves on the community. Things that I've seen through United Way, things that Geico Cares, things that I've seen just period across the whole landscape of this community. It fills me with pride to know that this is my community and the community comes together when people are in need. The Dream Center just is on the top of my head because of the fact that I think about the food and the distribution of things, and there are other organizations that do similar things. But I was just on a phone call with Stephen Hill with the community, the Dream Center, speaking about things that I can offer to counseling and mentoring of their young folks within this environment once they are able to get to another phase within this pandemic. But again, yes, I spoke about the Dream Center. I don't want to not show love to everyone because the community is just awesome. And I've seen many, many different things.
So appreciate that. That definitely is a success story when people are helping others and those that aren't as fortunate and recognizing that need and going out and supporting it. That is it. But it is the heart of Lakeland. I'll agree with you. Our
Yes.
community, it's such a great,
Awesome community.
a bedroom community, if you will, where people know each other, people help each other. We got some great corporations that support people in need, and just, you know, this event that we have, you know, last year we had about 115 people in the room together, just pouring into each other and learning from each other. You know, this year the numbers are going to be down because of COVID, but we're still, the environment's going to be the same, where we're working together. And we're just so glad that you joined us today. Those out there listening, thank you for being a participant in Live to Lead this year. It's been a tough year, but we want you to understand we have hope going forward. Troy, give us some last thoughts.
You know, the challenge that we see sometimes may be a false sense of reality. And I say that respectfully. I realize that people have been laid off. I realize people have lost loved ones. So have I. I realize the losses involved. I realize the impact of loss. Yet at the same time, when I think about all of us as we're brought into this world, I go back to these images of being children. And I remember we all, before we had any conceptual knowledge of anything, we all started out walking. And as we started to get our balance, Brian, we would fall. And as a child, again, without receiving any coaching or having any influence over anyone, innately within us, we would get up, right? And we would start walking again, and we would explore. We had no fear, and we would fall, and we would get up, and we would start walking again. Later on, those that are around us influenced the way we would act, right? They would influence us based off of the emotion they conveyed towards us, right? Which also helped develop the mind, and we would get up, and we start getting conditioned to look around and see a reaction, right? And then if the parent or the person watching the child go, oh my goodness, then we get that reaction of fear and being scared. And you know, I think about all of that. Let me go back to the very beginning. Innately, we would fall and we would get back up. Innately. So when you think about this adversity, I believe within all of our DNA, we still have that original blueprint, right? That we can fall and get back up and not get all stressed out because of the environment. And I truly believe that that's the time that I want to inspire and encourage everyone. When you think about hope, that's the time that you fall and realize, you know what? I got this. And you're not doing this alone. You have a whole community here that's going to help us all get back up. So keep hope, as Jesse Jackson was saying in his 84 campaign, keep hope alive, right? And help open people's eyes with the way you deal with this adversity, right? And it's gonna be all right. We're gonna be all right.
Thank you, Troy. That is a message of hope, and we appreciate it. Listen, everyone that's listening today, I have come up with an idea for myself, and I want to share it with you. 2020 is a plow. 2020 has plowed my soil. And it has rooted me up. It's changed my environment. And I want to go forth and plant some new seeds and grow in this soil. So understand, it's been tough, but it's breaking up some of that fallow ground, and we can grow and flourish in it going forward in 2021. You know, those goals you had for a 2020 vision, don't lose hope. Don't lose sight of that. Right. Reconvene, dust it off, and let's use it for 2021. Thank you for listening today. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.